He crossed the line, literally, hurling a coin at the royal guard's boots and reaching for his bearskin hat, convinced his arrogance would go unchallenged. But then, a voice thundered through the air, freezing him in his tracks. Moments later, the tourist was on the ground, humiliated and drenched, as the crowd erupted in applause. What happened next was nothing short of unforgettable. The air was crisp, the kind that nipped at your nose but reminded you that London mornings had a charm of their own. Horse Guards Parade was its usual spectacle, tourists bustling, cameras flashing, and the ever-imposing figure of Private James Carter standing like a sentinel of time. His uniform was immaculate, his boots polished to a mirror finish, and his gaze fixed straight ahead. The only sign of his personal sacrifice was his right arm, strapped immobile to his side, a badge of resilience, not a limitation. But amidst the awestruck crowd emerged him, Trevor Miller, a man whose ego seemed to be compensating for something else entirely. With his oversized camera and an attitude larger than the nearby palace gates, Trevor wasn't here to admire history or honor tradition. No, he was here for one thing: content. And poor James, standing silently at his post, had unknowingly become Trevor's next target. "Oi, soldier boy!" Trevor's voice cut through the air like an out-of-tune trumpet, jarring enough to make the crowd wince. He clapped his hands together loudly as if commanding a pet. "Give us a wave, yeah? Don't be shy." James, ever the professional, didn't move a muscle. His expression remained stoic, his posture unwavering. But Trevor, undeterred by the lack of reaction, saw this as a challenge rather than a cue to back off. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue or your arm?" he jeered, the corners of his mouth curling into a smug grin. Cue the collective gasp from the onlookers. A mother with 2 young children gave Trevor a sharp glare, shielding her kids from his vitriol. "Show some respect," she snapped, but Trevor only rolled his eyes. "Relax, lady. It's just a bit of fun. He's here to entertain us, right? Like a statue with a paycheck." The tension in the crowd grew thicker than London fog. Some tourists whispered among themselves, clearly uncomfortable, while others openly glared at Trevor. But he wasn't done, not even close. He took a bold step over the white line, the sacred boundary that separated the guards from the public. The invisible wall of respect was now a trampled puddle under his designer sneakers. "Come on, mate, don't be so uptight." Trevor mockingly saluted James, a caricature of the real thing, and struck a ridiculous pose for his live streaming audience. "Bet you're not even allowed to laugh, huh? That's gotta suck." Still, James didn't react. His silence, dignified and unyielding, seemed to provoke Trevor even more. "What's the point if you can't even move?" Trevor sneered, pulling a coin from his pocket and tossing it at James's polished boots. The metal clinked against the cobblestones, a sound that somehow echoed louder than it should have. The crowd's unease morphed into outrage. A man in a tweed coat muttered, "Unbelievable, absolutely disgraceful." A group of teens filming nearby stopped laughing, their phones now capturing Trevor's growing humiliation instead. One woman even shouted, "Stop it, he's doing his job." But Trevor, oblivious to the mounting disgust, grinned at his phone. "Guys, look at this. The guy's like a mannequin. Guess British tradition ain't what it's cracked up to be." The irony was almost too much. Here was Trevor, a self-proclaimed connoisseur of culture, reducing one of Britain's most enduring symbols of honor to a prop in his digital circus. The audience didn't need the narrator to say it, but here it was. Seriously, can you believe this guy? And yet, James stood tall, the embodiment of restraint. His silence wasn't weakness. It was power, a quiet defiance that spoke louder than any words ever could. As Trevor's antics escalated, so did the crowd's silent wish. When will karma catch up with this fool? Little did they know, it was just around the corner. Trevor Miller was in his element, basking in the glow of his live stream audience. His phone, held aloft, captured the spectacle. The towering figure of Private James Carter, unyielding and resolute, while Trevor circled him like a cat toying with its prey. "Ladies and gentlemen," Trevor began, his voice dripping with mock enthusiasm, "behold the world's most unresponsive guard. Come on, buddy, give us something. A smile, a blink, anything." The crowd watched in stunned silence. their shock evolving into a simmering anger. You could almost hear their collective thought. Is this guy serious? Trevor's antics grew bolder. He leaned in, his hand hovering dangerously close to James's iconic bearskin hat. The crowd gasped, a ripple of disbelief passing through them like an electric current. One elderly man muttered, "Touch that hat and you'll regret it." But Trevor was too busy playing to his audience to notice. Just as Trevor's fingers inched closer to the sacred symbol of British tradition, a voice, sharp and commanding, cut through the air like a crack of thunder. "That's enough." The crowd turned as one, and there she was, Sergeant Emily Hart, James's commanding officer. Her uniform was as pristine as her authority was undeniable. She moved with the kind of confidence that made even the boldest troublemakers think twice. Flanking her were two other guards, their presence as imposing as the Tower of London itself. Trevor froze mid-act, his bravado crumbling like a sandcastle under a rising tide. Whoa, chill. I was just joking," he stammered, his hands raised in mock surrender. But Emily was having none of it. Her gaze was cold, unwavering. "Step back," she ordered, her voice as sharp as the ceremonial sword at her side. Trevor, trying to salvage what was left of his act, stumbled backward. And that's when it happened. In his haste, he stepped onto a patch of spilled coffee, likely the remnants of someone's discarded cup. His foot slipped, his arms flailed, and gravity did the rest. Trevor landed flat on his back with a resounding splat, his phone skittering across the pavement, the live stream now showing nothing but cobblestones. For a moment, there was silence. And then, the crowd erupted in laughter. It wasn't just the kind of laugh you hear at a joke, it was cathartic, a collective release of pent-up frustration. Some clapped, others whistled, and a few even recorded the moment for posterity. After all, who wouldn't want a front-row seat to karma in action? Trevor, now drenched in coffee and humiliation, scrambled to his feet. His face was as red as a London bus, his swagger replaced by sheepishness. But before he could make a hasty exit, Emily stepped forward. "Not so fast," she said, motioning to the guards. "You'll be escorted out." The two guards flanked Trevor, their expressions stoic but their movements decisive. As they guided him through the crowd, jeers followed in his wake. "Serves you right," one woman shouted. Another added, "Bet you won't try that again." And then, for the first time that day, James moved. He took one deliberate step forward, his boots striking the cobblestones with a sound that commanded attention. Fixing Trevor with a steady gaze, he finally spoke. His voice was calm, steady, and carried the weight of centuries of tradition. "Duty demands respect, even from fools." The crowd roared their approval, clapping and cheering for the guardsman who had stood his ground with quiet dignity. Trevor, meanwhile, was hurried away, his phone still buzzing with notifications from his now viral embarrassment. As the crowd began to disperse, you could feel the shift in the air. The scene had started as a display of disrespect, but ended as a testament to resilience and honor. James returned to his post, standing tall, his presence a silent reminder that while some might mock tradition, its strength lies in those who uphold it. As Trevor's coffee-drenched form was escorted away, the air seemed to shift. The tension dissipated, replaced by an almost tangible sense of vindication. The crowd, which moments earlier had been simmering with outrage, now surged toward James Carter, their faces lit with admiration. "Bravo!" shouted a man in the front, clapping enthusiastically. A murmur of agreement rippled through the group as more joined in, their applause swelling into a full-fledged ovation. It wasn't just for the scene they'd witnessed, it was for the integrity of the man who'd stood tall, a living monument to discipline and respect. Amidst the applause, an elderly veteran stepped forward, his movement slow but deliberate. His medals glinted faintly in the winter sun, a silent echo of past sacrifices. The veteran raised a trembling hand in salute, his eyes moist with emotion. "You're an inspiration, son," he said, his voice heavy with respect. The words carried more weight than the loudest cheer. James, ever composed, gave a rare smile. He nodded respectfully, his gaze meeting the veteran's, in a silent exchange of mutual understanding. Two men bound by the unspoken code of duty and honor. It was a moment so pure, it quieted even the most vocal spectators. Standing nearby, Sergeant Emily Hart turned to the gathering, her voice steady but laced with conviction. "This is not just a uniform," she said, gesturing toward James. "It represents centuries of service and sacrifice. What you witness today isn't just a tradition, it's a testament to values that stand the test of time. Let it serve as a reminder that respect is not optional." The crowd hung on her every word, their applause reigniting as she stepped back. Among them was a young boy, no older than 10, clutching a small Union Jack flag. Hesitant but determined, he broke through the throng, his eyes fixed on James. The boy's small hands extended the flag toward the towering guardsman. James, towering in stature but gentle in presence, knelt slightly, his good hand reaching out to accept the flag. The scene, simple yet profound, was punctuated by a collective sigh from the crowd. It was a quiet reminder that beneath the ceremonial grandeur, there was humanity, strength tempered by humility. And then came the aftermath, the true measure of modern-day karma. Videos of Trevor's fall and James's unshakable resolve flooded social media, spreading faster than the latest pop anthem. Hashtags like #GuardKarma, #RespectTheUniform, and #TraditionMatters trended within hours. The comments were a tidal wave of support. This is what true dignity looks like. Trevor got what he deserved. You don't mess with the guards. James Carter, the legend we didn't know we needed. By the next morning, James had become an unlikely hero. Tourists flocked to the Horse Guards parade, not for antics, but to witness the steadfast guardsman who had become a symbol of unwavering dignity. Cameras no longer sought to provoke him. They captured him with reverence, a stark contrast to the mockery of the previous day. And what of James? Each morning, as he donned his uniform and took his post, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The weight of his duty felt lighter, buoyed by the knowledge that he had not just upheld the honor of his role, but reminded the world of the timeless values it represented. As the crowds gathered each day, James stood tall, his presence a silent declaration. Tradition isn't a relic, it's a living, breathing force, carried forward by those who refuse to let it fade.